Madam Speaker, the issue of multinational profit shifting is about fairly sharing the revenue burden. As the former Treasurer has pointed out, this is about revenue adequacy. Because when a handful of big businesses shift their profits offshore, it hits the federal budget's bottom line. And it's about fairly sharing the revenue burden. When a small number of big firms do the wrong thing, it's the great majority of businesses, large and small, it's the self-employed and PAYG taxpayers who end up paying more than we should. And it's also about our prospects for long-term growth. Because if we don't tackle multinational profit shifting, then we're effectively turning a blind eye to distortions in the market, which are going to slow economic growth over time. These are the sort of dumb failings in the tax system which the former Treasurer set about trying to fix, because they're loopholes that reward the wrong kind of effort, and they operate unnervingly like those old-fashioned subsidies. That old McEwenist policy which favoured producers over consumers, which distorted the allocation of resources and which encouraged firms not to test themselves against the market, but to test themselves against the rule book. We don't need that kind of economic activity because that's harmful economic activity. It encourages firms to focus their energies on getting their accountants to play with loopholes that might allow debt shifting within organisations, not in order to improve the productive capacity of the economy, but in order to find the next loophole through the tax system. It operates a bit like trade wars, in which each of us draws our knives only to have the effect of cutting off one another's faces. We need to have a confidence in being able to sustain an adequate revenue base. Can I pause for a minute? Did you want to speak on this? Excellent. And so we still see these... one never knows whether a coalition speaker is going to turn up in these debates, Madam Deputy Speaker, because I'd like to see them in this chamber. I'd like to see them having more than one member from that side engaging in these important debates over multinational profit shifting. These are the debates which ought to be bipartisan, because no one in this House should stand for an extra tax loophole. No one in this House should support giving $1 billion back to multinationals while cutting the wages of the cleaners that clean our offices. They're the wrong priorities for Australia. That's just not just against Labor values, but it's against Australia's fundamental egalitarian values. And these sort of mercantilist arguments against reform, it feels to me sometimes, Deputy Speaker, as though we're engaging in that old tariff debate all over again, in which we have members walking in here supporting loopholes which, in the end, might be good for a few sharp-witted accountants, but end up being bad for the budget bottom line. We've had inequality growing steadily for the past generation. It didn't rise over the last six years of Labor in government. 2007 and 2013, inequality doesn't rise, but it's significantly higher than it was in the 1970s. To give you just one statistic, Deputy Speaker, the top 1% has doubled its income share, the top 0.1% tripled its income share. If you're in the bottom 10th of the wage distribution, your real earnings grew $7,000 over the last generation. But if you're in the top 10th, your real earnings grew $47,000. That's more than 3 times the wage growth at the top of the distribution than we see at the bottom of the distribution. And so now is the very last time at which we need a government which is giving money away to the firms with multi-billion-dollar profits while taking money away from pensioners, from those who are sick, forcing the unemployed to spend 6 months without benefits, perhaps sleeping in a car if they're unable to find a job. Australia's egalitarian values demand that we have a smarter approach on multinational profit shifting. The member opposite pointed out that the government is not proceeding with a targeted anti-avoidance provision. Well, that's a provision which the government promised they would put in place. When they said they wouldn't proceed with our repeal of 2590, they promised at the end of 2013 a targeted anti-avoidance provision. A year later, they broke that promise, like so many other promises that have been broken since this government came to office.
Thank you, Member.